Coming up next on KPBS Evening Edition, Camp Pendleton Marines cope with more loss, this time closer to home.
And 2 college students are doing their part for democracy. We'll tell you how they registered hundreds of new voters in just 3 days. KPBS Evening Edition starts now.
Hello, thanks for joining us. I'm Joanne Ferrian.
And I'm Dwayne Brown. Padres Hall of Famer Tony Gwynn is recovering from surgery tonight. He had a cancerous tumor removed from inside his right cheek. So far, it appears the cancer has not spread. It's the same area where a malignant growth was removed in 2010. It's a rare type of tumor found in less than 1% of head or neck cancers. Gwynn blames years of chewing smokeless tobacco. He's coached San Diego State's baseball team for the past 10 years, but it could take up to 18 months for Gwynn to regain movement on the right side of his face.
Home sales were up slightly in Southern California in January, but prices also came down. The latest housing survey by San Diego-based DataQuick found that more than 14,000 homes changed hands in the first month of the year. And the region's housing market is showing no signs of snapping out of the malaise it's been in since the market crashed in 2007. The majority of the sales are coming from short sales or from the sale of foreclosed properties.
A new report predicts the homeless problem for military veterans in San Diego is likely to persist. It shows various federal, state, and San Diego agencies spent $54 million on the problem between 2009 and 2010, but the money has done little to provide affordable housing or jobs for homeless vets. 1 out of 4 homeless people on the streets of San Diego is a military veteran. On any given night, up to 2,000 are either on the streets or living in a temporary shelter. Because of its strong military presence, San Diego is also home to the largest veteran population in the country.
There's still a lot more work to be done.
Eric Bruvald is with the National University System Institute for Policy Research in La Jolla. He says the federal government's goal of ending homelessness among vets by 2015 is likely to become harder.
Prior generations of veterans have done actually better than their non-veteran counterparts. They have higher incomes, they have lower unemployment rate, and they participate at a greater rate in the labor force.
But his study finds those who've served since 9/11, mostly 20-somethings, are suffering at far greater numbers.
So that's got to be of concern. Over the next decade, about 16,000 post-9/11 veterans can be expected to come to San Diego.
Bruvald says San Diego isn't well prepared to deal with the influx.
And if we don't have proactive efforts to address that population, we're really at risk for some of those to fall into poverty.
He says we also have to rethink employment training because the majority of vets go into jobs we don't offer here, like manufacturing and federal civilian work.
Conversely, veterans don't tend to go into the hospitality industry, something that we've grown a tremendous amount of. And there doesn't seem to be, especially among newer veterans, a huge number that are going into the innovative and science and technology industries that have remained a bright spot for San Diego.
One of the conclusions from the report suggests the public and private sector invest more to help younger vets transition back into civilian life.
UC San Diego is launching a new YouTube original channel next month. UCTV Prime will be the only university-run channel in the country to be included in YouTube's new platform of 100 original channels. UCTV will debut 15 minutes of new content from throughout all the University of California campuses each week. It will include documentary miniseries, interviews, commentaries, and video shorts. The subject matter will range from the arts to election issues.
The Navy is transferring the commander of Guantanamo Bay Prison to North Island Naval Air Station on Coronado. Rear Admiral David Woods has been in charge of the prison on the U.S. base in Cuba since August. He will soon be in charge of training naval aviators. Woods clashed with lawyers for prisoners over a new rule he imposed on legal mail. He ordered a team to review the process, but lawyers say it violated attorney-client privilege. The Navy says the mail dispute is not related to Woods' departure, and his new San Diego assignment is a normal career progression for the Admiral.
Japan Airlines will operate the first ever non-stop flight between San Diego and Tokyo beginning in December. The Japan Airlines Boeing 787 Dreamliner will depart Lindbergh Field at noon and arrive at Narita International Airport at 4:55 p.m. local time the next day. And of course, that's because it crosses the international date line. The return flight leaves Japan at 5:30 p.m. and gets to San Diego at 10:30 a.m. Camp Pendleton Marines are coping with the deaths of 4 Marines this week, a deadly car crash and the shooting death of Sergeant Manuel Levi Loggins Jr. Loggins was shot to death by an Orange County Sheriff's deputy early Tuesday morning in a school parking lot. KPBS military blogger Beth Ford Roth joins me now with the latest on that investigation. Beth, first, tell us about the circumstances surrounding Sergeant Loggins' death.
Well, last Tuesday, Sergeant Loggins was driving near San Clemente High School with his 2 daughters in the back seat, and allegedly a Orange County Sheriff's deputy saw him speeding and then crashing through a gate at the high school. He then parked in the parking lot and left the car. The deputy said that Loggins then went to a nearby field and was speaking in irrational statements, and the deputy feared for the 2 girls that were in the back seat, and he went to approach Loggins, and that's when he was shot.
Now, late yesterday, the union representing the sheriff's deputy who shot Sergeant Loggins made a statement. Now, what did that statement say?
Well, there were several sort of key points that hadn't come out yet. One that I think is very interesting is that the deputy that shot Sergeant Loggins was himself a former Marine. He was in the Marine Corps for 4 years. Also, we didn't know that the deputy had called for backup and that backup had arrived at the scene, and that several deputies went and spoke with the 2 girls in the back seat while their father was outside of the car, and that the girls indicated allegedly that they were sort of concerned about their father's behavior. And then Loggins apparently came back to the car, ignored orders to stop, got in the car, and the deputy then shot Loggins to keep him from driving away with the 2 girls. The union said that the deputy was concerned about the 2 girls' safety, and that was sort of primary and why Loggins was shot.
Now, what can you tell us about what you're hearing about Sergeant Loggins? We know he was a Camp Pendleton Marine.
That's right. Now, this is what's so strange is that friends of Sergeant Loggins say he was a calm and peaceful man, very much a family man, very religious. He used to read the Bible regularly with his daughters. In fact, he would take his daughters to San Clemente High School to walk around the track and read the Bible. He was just a very peaceful, calm, loving man training to be a nurse. And friends of the sergeant just don't see a connection between the man that was described at the shooting and the man that they knew and loved.
Beth, who's investigating the shooting now?
The Orange County Sheriff's Department is investigating the shooting.
Now, I want to move on to another tragic event this week. Also early Tuesday morning, 4 Marines crashed their car into a tree at Dana Point. 3 of the men died. A 4th is in critical condition. Now, there also new information on this accident. San Diego County Sheriff's Department released more info. What did they tell us, Beth?
Actually, it was the Orange County Sheriff's Department. They came out today and said that the driver of the car, who was actually the only Marine who survived, he's in extremely critical condition right now, that he was drinking before the crash. They didn't say that he was intoxicated, but they said that alcohol did play a factor in the crash, as well as speed. The car was speeding at the time of the accident before it jumped a curb and crashed into a tree.
Okay, KPBS military blogger Beth Ford Roth.
Still to come on Evening Edition, the story of a San Diego high school student who's determined to thrive without a family to lean on. And we'll hear from 2 political science majors who come up with a way to increase voter registration on campus.
Tonight on KPBS. At 8, explore the diversity of wildlife and habitats at the roof of the world, where the elusive snow leopard roams, the Himalayas on Nature. Then at 9, discover ancient mummies and uncover secrets that have been hidden in cliff-top graves for thousands of years, the cave people of the Himalayas. And at 10, researchers dive into underwater caves that formed during the last ice age in search of the hidden history of the Earth's climate. That's tonight on KPBS.
I'm Gwen Eichel on the next news hour. A report from Tunisia, 1 year after that nation lit the fire for the Arab Spring revolutions. That's Wednesday on the PBS NewsHour.
The American people have named PBS the most trusted source of news and public affairs
For the 8th year in a row.
Trust.
The American people have spoken.
Thank you.
KPBS Evening Edition is made possible by Joan and Erwin Jacobs and by
In 2006, San Diego's largest school district served about 400 homeless students. That number soared to 3,500 this year. Homeless students get lower test scores and are twice as likely to drop out. As part of our series on homeless kids in school, KPBS education reporter Kyla Calvert brings us the story of one girl who's beating the odds.
It's 5:40 in the morning when 16-year-old Courtney Medlin steps out the door of the group home where she lives in downtown San Diego to go to school. And it's likely she's already been awake for 2 hours.
If I'm going to wash my hair in the morning, I'll wake up at like 3:45 and I'll wash my hair, and then afterwards I'll get ready for school.
The city bus stop is 4 blocks away. She normally has time to make a quick stop at 7-Eleven.
Go buy some coffee to keep me warm and keep me awake during school because I've had an issue with sleeping in class.
The 7-Eleven is also well lit, which isn't the case at the intersection where Medlin waits for the bus.
Then I wait till about 6:30ish before the school bus comes in the cold at like 6:30 in the morning. I get on the school bus, get to school at like 7.
That school is Scripps Ranch High School, about 15 miles north of downtown. It's one of the highest performing high schools in the city. About 20% of the students are considered economically disadvantaged, compared to more than 55% of all the district's high school students. But Medlin blends right in.
I think what really made me want to stay is just like I was comfortable here. Like I already knew people here. I didn't have to worry about dealing with other people somewhere else. Like people who end up like talking behind my back or like talking to my face.
Medlin says she isn't interested in hiding the lengths she goes to get to school from her classmates and friends.
I'm going to be open about it. It's not something to hide. Like, it's who I am. Like, that's what's happened in my life.
When Medlin's mother overdosed on methamphetamines the day before Thanksgiving in 2008, she was already living with her grandmother. She had moved there a few years earlier after a year of hotel hopping with her mom, but things at her grandmother's weren't perfect either.
We started fighting, and it became kind of daily. And it wasn't just with her, it was other members of my family that lived in the house. And it started getting bad, and it started getting physical, and it was to the point where I didn't want to live there anymore, and they didn't want to raise me, and I had nowhere else to go.
The stress of instability is hard on anyone, and Scripps Ranch principal Ann Mena says her years spent as a school counselor showed her it can be devastating to kids' academic success.
The students were here. When we have them, we can help them. And then when they leave, we don't know what happens to them. And then when they come back, we just kind of have to pick up, but it's maybe 2 steps behind where we were from the original assistance with them.
The rest of Medlin's morning is nothing if not routine. English class, then graphic communications, child development, and pre-calculus. The thing that keeps Medlin connected to that consistency is the free bus pass the school district issues for her each month. She picks it up from her counselor, Leslie McDonald, who says Medlin's continued success at Scripps is of her own making.
She's one of those students that she believes in herself. She knows, she has challenges, and we work through them, and we talk, and life is not so easy. But by the same token, she looks at the future with a really awesomely positive outlook, and she wants to do whatever it takes to get there.
Right now, McDonald is helping Medlin register for the SATs. District staff also helps students like her with basics like clothes and school supplies, and with things like prepping for job interviews. But Medlin's friend Celia Rodriguez says even with a little support, she doesn't think most of their classmates could handle what Medlin takes on every day.
Every time during lunch, she'll go on Student Connect and check her grades and be like, oh man, I gotta work on this. I need to get an A. I need to pass this final. And yeah, she's definitely a good student. She sacrifices a lot of things to become someone in life. And she does a lot. And most students, you know, they just have it handed by it, you know? And she doesn't have her mom there. Her dad's not always there for her. Like, it takes a lot to be a person like her.
Finding out just how on her own Medlin is was a shock to some of her teachers, like Josh Rosenberg, whose biology class she heads to after lunch.
You know, this is fifth period, and some students start to get tired, or they just kind of, after lunch, they come in all kind of spastic, but she comes in and she likes to work, and it's complete answers, and it's interesting participation, it's questions about material, and just you would never know.
Today, Rosenberg's class is learning about genetics and probability with a coin-tossing exercise. Instead of flagging, Medlin laughs with her lab partner. Once class ends at 2:15, there's no time for hanging around with friends. Medlin's back on the school bus. She'll get home around 3:45. Mandatory homework hour starts at 4:30, then it's dinner and an hour of chores. Medlin says she usually gets to bed by 11 o'clock. Then it all starts again the next morning.
That was KPBS education reporter Kyla Calvert. Tomorrow, part 2 of our series looks at some dedicated teachers who are providing much-needed stability to these homeless students. The Navy Secretary says the next 3 guided missile destroyers will be named after military heroes with ties to San Diego County. He says the ships will be named the USS John Finn, the USS Ralph Johnson, and USS Rafael Peralta. Finn and Johnson are Congressional Medal of Honor recipients, and Peralta was awarded the Navy Cross. But there is a campaign to get his award upgraded by the president. That award would be upgraded to the Medal of Honor. Do you remember casting your first vote? Odds are most of us were past college age. That's because the majority of young adults do not register to vote. Joanne speaks with 2 young men trying to change that at the Evening Edition Roundtable.
There is a belief that one's college years can inspire community and political activism, but is it all lip service? According to the latest census figures from 2010, only about 1 in 5 Americans between the ages of 18 and 24 vote. Here in San Diego, 2 students took matters into their own hands when they learned just 6% of UC San Diego students were even registered to vote. Joining me in studio are Arsha Sharifian and Dean Searcy. They are UCSD political science students. And you also founded an interesting organization. Tell me a little bit about that, first of all, Arsha.
Great. So SOVAC is Student Organized Voter Access Committee. Our job is to go out and provide students the tools to empower them to seek change through the democratic process.
Now, 6% was the number I read just a moment ago. Why so few students registered to vote?
Well, we saw that, every time the voter registration laws state that every time students move from one place to another, anytime anybody moves from one place to another, they need to register to vote. And as a result, unfortunately, students don't have that information, that one basic information that really hurts them and their voter registration numbers on different campuses. So, for example, we saw that students coming from like Sacramento to Los Angeles or Sacramento to San Diego for school, that they felt that, oh, I'm registered to vote in Sacramento, I'm registered to vote in Los Angeles, but they forget that as a result of moving down to San Diego for school, they need to register to vote.
Now, Dean, I read that this was more of a problem at UCSD, that in fact it had one of the lowest rates in terms of registration.
That's actually correct. As far as UCSA, the University of California Student Association figures go, UC San Diego was actually, at the beginning of this year, the lowest, had the lowest percentage of registered students on campus with 6%, with UC Santa Barbara being the highest with 38%. And so this problem in particular of student voter registration isn't isolated to San Diego in particular. Irvine has very low numbers. All of the other UC campuses have very low registration numbers. So it's not just a problem for UC San Diego, but I believe the problem is very acute in UC San Diego because we're known for being the campus that students just go to and fro. They leave from their dormitories, they go to class, they go to the library, then they go home. And so we felt as SOVAC that we had to kind of push our way into the system, kind of target them while they're going to the library. We actually are able to table inside the library now, the first organization to ever be able to do that. And we're turning that number around.
Now, I know you're political science students, but why did you want to do this? Why do you care?
We got to apply the information, so as students, we've been taught to go out and seek the information and learn about the academic research. But if you don't apply the information, then, it's not worth as much, So,
So what do you mean apply the information?
When we go out, taking classes with, Thad Cowes or taking awesome classes with Professor Gallerisi, and, you learn so much about voter registration. One story that my professor told me, Professor Gallerisi told me was, when he was in college, whenever he was a professor, he would call in different legislators and talk about various issues. And the first questions that the staffer would ask the person who called, would ask Professor Gallerisi is, are you registered to vote? Mm-hmm. And so this speaks volumes of, the fight that students have had for such a long time. And we want to be able to provide those students the tools to go out and advocate on behalf of issues that they feel very strongly about. And step one, is registering to vote.
Dean, what are those issues? What do students care about?
I believe that really the hotbed issue right now is tuition increases. Over the past decade, fees for the across the UC system, the Cal State system, have been increasing exponentially. And the only way that we're going to be able to stop that increase is by increasing the amount of students that are participating in the process, increasing the amount of students that vote, who care, who feel they can actually participate in their own democracy that is influencing their lives and their financial futures.
And you've been doing that. So you've increased numbers. Tell me what those numbers are.
So it was phenomenal. This past move-in weekend, which pretty much happened during the fall quarter, we were privileged enough to be able to work with great administrators, Ray Guerrero, on our UCSD campus, and we signed a good faith agreement stating that we would be given access to students during the move-in weekend event. So if you will, the first table is, give me your name, give me your ID number. Table 2 is, SOVAC, here's some information about voter registration. Table 3 is, here's your package, here's your keys, move your things upstairs. And so being integrated into that move-in weekend process, we were able to register 1,300 students in about 3 days, which is pretty much the equivalent of everything that UC San Diego was able to do the year before. And the context for this 2011 move-in weekend event was that it was a non-election year. Our organization just began. We didn't really have much of a structure, and we didn't really have much funds. And so going into a kind of blind, just run and gun, developing a methodology based upon extensive academic research supplied by Thad Cowes and other great professors, we were able to make, I think, somewhat of a difference.
Dean, we haven't got a lot of time, but quickly, what's the breakdown in terms of those that you did register to vote with political affiliation?
Do you mean in terms of what political party they registered
exactly.
as? So most of the students that we ended up registering, as you might be able to guess, have registered as independents. And that's just part of a trend that students tend to register as independents. And I believe in the country as a whole, more people are registering as independents. And we also, being at UC San Diego, we got a good number of Democrats registering, but the people who register most frequently and most strongly, the people who think the least about registering with the political party, are the Republicans. They're very, very passionate about being Republicans and registering as such.
We're also seeing a lot of students register previously as Libertarians or Democrats or even decline to state and re-registering for Republicans in order to participate in the upcoming primary.
Well, we're out of time. We're going to have to leave it there. But Dean Searcy and Arsha Sharifian, thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us,
John.
This is KPBS Evening Edition.
On Masterpiece Classics.
Is Mr. Bates the one Lady Rosamond told me about? The murderer?
Who's been wrongly accused?
My husband's on trial for his life.
What is it? I warn you, even my patience has its limits. You don't have to marry him, you know.
I do have to marry him.
Why?
We're talking to the dead.
Is there anyone there?
God knows what we're in for now.
Stop this at once!
Downton Abbey on Masterpiece Classic.
Sunday at 9 on KPBS.
In his teen years, lots of people were saying they expected Bill Clinton to be president someday.
They hated his guts, and they would go to the end of the earth to destroy him.
What a squandering of talent and possibility.
Tonight has made Bill Clinton the comeback kid.
A definitive look at the man and the president.
Clinton on American Experience. Monday, February 20th at 9, only on PBS.
Welcome back to the Public Square on KPBS Evening Edition. Yesterday, we told you about the San Diego connection to super PACs, those committees that are allowed to raise large amounts of money for political campaigns. Our media partner, investigative news source, followed some of that money, and the trail led them to San Diego. Peking Duck, our most prolific commentator on KPBS.org, wrote, "I hate these super PACs, regardless of which party is using them. Our nation has become a corrupt sham in the eyes of a world that once looked upon us as a beacon and shining example of free and fair elections. Our elections are not free nor fair. They are bought and sold." Well, you too can become a frequent commentator like Peking Duck. There are several ways. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, or write to me, jfarian@kpbs.org. I may use some of your comments on air, so let me know if I can use your real name, which, by the way, would love to know the real identity of Peking Duck. And now let's go back to the news desk where Dwayne has a recap of tonight's top stories.
The latest San Diego housing survey by DataQuick shows home sales were up in January, but prices were down. The upswing came mostly from short sales or previously foreclosed properties. Padres Hall of Famer Tony Gwynn is recovering from surgery tonight. He had a cancerous tumor removed from inside his right cheek. So far, it appears the cancer has not spread. It is the same area, however, where a malignant growth was removed 2 years ago. It's a rare type of tumor found in less than 1% of head or neck cancers. Gwynn blames years of chewing smokeless tobacco. Of course, he's coached San Diego State's baseball team for the past 10 years. Doctors say it could take up to 18 months for Gwynn to regain movement on the right side of his face. Lots of rain around the county today. A cold Pacific storm expected to bring more tonight. The National Weather Service has issued a winter storm advisory for East County, where conditions on Interstate 8 will be hazardous. That's also where the storm could drop up to 6 inches of snow in the mountains. You can watch and comment on any of the stories you saw tonight on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks so much for joining us. You have a great night. Here's a look at the extended forecast.